All right. So there's a few things that I will not actually go over today. Reason being is because all of that is consisting of things that we learn throughout the rest of the book. So if you notice, we're jumping from chapter 1 and going straight into chapter 12. If you actually look at the table of contents or the chapter titles, you're going to notice that there are a few things that you are asked to you're asked a few things that are required for you to set up your company, such as entering in open um, open balances. And once we get into opening balances, we're dealing with bank reconciliations, we're dealing with outstanding checks, we're dealing with entering accounts payable, like all your bills. We're looking at entering any open balances for accounts receivable. All of those chapters are consisting of chapters 2, 3, 5, and 4 and 8 because it's inventory. So all of those things I will skip for now because we will gradually learn it as we go through the course of this class. So I don't want to jump the gun because you guys are not exposed to it and you guys are not quite sure. So again, we went from chapter 1 to chapter 12. So chapter 12 is already assuming that you've done chapters 2 through 13. Or I'm sorry, 2 through 11 in between. Okay, so of course we haven't gone there yet. So I will stop at a certain point in chapter 12, but I will introduce you a few things that are very, very important that you need to know. Okay, so again, here we are talking about setting up our company file. Okay, sorry, I forgot to ask. Can everyone see my screen? I don't. Okay.
Yes.
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 Perfect. Okay. So again, the topics that we're going to be looking at today is, of course, setting up how to create a um, company file. Okay. And the most important thing is we need to determine what our start date is. And I'll go ahead and talk about that when we go through each question that we're being asked for. Okay. So I know the first thing it says, well, the start date is going to be the most important date. So I can mention it here and then I'll mention it again when we go over the actual setup. So the most important thing is when you are going to start your date. Okay, so most cases, if you have an existing company file, the most important thing is you want to start your books according to your fiscal year. Okay. Reason being is because you definitely don't want to start your books and your balances will be off because, you know, the when you start your QuickBooks is generally, you know, is the general rule of thumb is that if you're going to be having an existing company, you don't want to have too many, unbalanced things. Or when you create a QuickBooks file, let's say you've been doing bookkeeping for a company and you did it manually, and then when you are starting with QuickBooks, you definitely want to start either the last day of your fiscal year, or usually it's the last day of the beginning of the year. So if your fiscal year is going to be calendar year, meaning January 1st all the way to December 31st, it is recommended that you start December 31st of the previous year. Now, of course, if you're doing fiscal year, they do recommend that you do the last date of the last year. So then when you start your books, it has a nice starting point, right? You never want to start on the first day because then you lose that extra day and you'll find your discrepancies on that very first day. Now, the rule of thumb here is if you choose your start date to be, for example, you do calendar year, you start your date to be on December 31st of the previous year, but you don't actually start entering in or you don't establish your company until January 5th. Your job is to enter any transactions that happen between January 1st to the 5th, okay? So you don't get any minor discrepancies putting the data in. Now there are also things too. You're not required to start your company on January 1st, okay? You can start your company as soon as you start using QuickBooks. But they do recommend you to, for a perfect measurement of, accurate data, you definitely want to start either the last day of the previous month or the last day of whether it's a quarter or something, okay? So you never want to start on the very, very first date of any month. You want to start the last day of the previous month, okay? So for example, today we're going to use Academy Photography to enter in data. And of course, we're going to do retrospective because, the book says that we're going to place it in January. So we're going to just follow what the book says, but there are a few things that we will actually have to change the time for. All right, so that's establishing the start date. Okay, once you've done that, okay, so then here becomes the 12 steps in order to set up your company file. All right, so the first one is establish a start date. So once you've done that, you've got the idea in your head. The second thing is now we're going to be creating a company file. Now there's more than what you think when it comes to creating a company file. You need to have all these details, written down somewhere before even thinking about entering a company file. Reason being is because you're going to be asked a bunch of questions that you need to think about even before even starting your company. And that is the reason why I had the accounting class create a business plan, because all of those questions are going to be crucial on establishing or even starting a business. You need to know, well, what kind of business are you? What kind of business organization are you? What do you do? Do you sell items? And if you do, are you going to charge sales tax? How are you going to do? Are you going to do a cash basis or are you going to do accrual basis? Right? And how often are you going to, have your accounting period? Other things is, are you going to have employees? And if you are they W-4 or W-2 workers or are they 1099? And how often are you going to pay them? So those kind of questions are going to come into play, and especially that should be the basic foundation of any kind of core business. Especially if you think you're going to come up with a fictitious business immediately, think about the basics. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to sell? How are you going to sell it? What kind of items are you going to buy? Etc., etc. So those things are definitely going to come into play, and we'll look into it when we actually complete on creating our company file. Okay? Once we've gone through that, then it's going to be the next step is to create our chart of accounts. Okay? So this one, it will be also fun. It's going to be interesting on what we can do for the chart of accounts. Okay? Once we've done that, that's where we start entering our open balances. Now again, I will show you the first two, all right? But everything else, like such as entering open balances for your inventory or adjusting inventory, that or year to end date income, anything like that. So let me see. From steps 6 all the way to 12 is something I will not cover today, because all of these are going to be covered throughout the rest of the week. And the most important thing about establishing a closing date is that if you establish a closing date, you will lock your QuickBooks when that day comes. So you want to be very careful not to do it just yet. And this happens towards in chapter 13. You will learn to how to set your closing date. So again, steps 6 through 12 is something that we're going to learn throughout the rest of this course. All right, so I'm going to show you steps through 1 through 5. Okay. So the very first thing that we want to do is to obviously create our company file. So there are two ways you can enter in your files or create a company file. And I will actually show you exactly two. I'll show you both ways. We're going to do first the detailed start, okay? And then we'll do the express start afterwards. Now the express start, okay? I'm going to tell you the difference right now. Express start is is more for people who've experienced QuickBooks for a while now, who understand, who knows how to navigate, who knows how to enter in data quickly, right? So it's more for people who have advanced knowledge into QuickBooks, right? And what an express start does is you're just entering you're entering in your company name, any details in regards to your company, and it creates the file, and you're going to be building your company file from scratch, meaning you're going to have to set up your start date, you're going to have to set up your inventory, you're going to set up your chart of accounts manually, okay? And of course, there's easy ways around it, and we'll talk about that when we get into the chart of accounts. But there are easy ways to be able to enter in data a lot quicker. But again, that comes with people who are very experienced with QuickBooks, okay? So the one that recommends for beginners is to use the detailed start. Okay, so the detailed start is going to build a company profile, and it's going to have either generic or it builds the file for you, so it makes it easier to be able to have the file with full details, such as having it set up for you. Okay, and it is definitely recommended for people who are beginner users of QuickBooks who don't really have an idea of what is to come when creating a company or creating a business in general. So this one we can also depict, like, maybe this is an idea of how we can establish our company. And we're going to go ahead and do both ways for this class. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with a detailed start. Okay, so again, here I am on QuickBooks. This is what happens when I open QuickBooks. You should get to this little main page, and it will ask you a few things. It will ask you to either create a company file or open or restore an existing file. We want to, of course, create our file. Then the next thing is you're going to get this window. Now, because I'm using QuickBooks 2019 Pro, there has been a minor change in regards to how this portion looks. So from here, you're going to be learning what comes from your book, but it's essentially the same way. So here, my first thing is going to be Start Setup. That is your Express setup right there. That blue button, if you click that, that's your Express start. Okay? What I want to show you is I want to get to the detailed start. On my end, it's going to be considered advanced start or advanced setup. So mine's going to be toggled right here at the drop-down menu, and I want to do advanced start. So again, for 2018, you will have the options. You'll have two options to either do Express Start or your Detailed Start. Okay? The Detailed Start is also known as your Easy Step Interview. Okay? So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started on creating our company file. So the first thing that we want to do is create the actual name of the file. So I'll talk about the difference between the company file or the company name and the actual legal name. So the company name is going to be basically whatever title you want to name this file. All right. So if you want to, you could say this is Bob's company. This is Lynn's company. You can say, or you could just call it whatever you like. Okay. So this one's going to be what you're accessing on QuickBooks. It's going to be what the file is going to be titled. Now, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and utilize what it says in the book because I want to make sure that when I'm creating these files that, they look, a little more professional. I'm not going to be listing personal information on here. So, for example, it says to use Academy Photography. Academy. Oops. I think I hit the, yep, I put the caps lock on. So Academy Photography. All right. So that is what I'm going to name my file. Now, other things that you're going to know is that, so that's what, every time you look for this file, that's what you're going to title in your file. I just repeated myself, I'm sorry. So your legal name or your legal business name is going to be whatever you file the actual company for. Whether you filed your business license to the state and the local agency, that's exactly what you're going to place here is the actual legal name that you applied for the state and government for the business license. So in this one, I believe it's Academy Photography. Is it LLC? I think it's, let's see what it says. It is going to be incorporated. Okay, so comma, INC. Okay, incorporated. All right. So that's the first thing you want to make sure is have a legitimate business name. Now, of course, when you guys place this information in here, I want you to create a fake business. Don't use a real existing business. So the next question is going to ask me is to enter in a tax ID number. Now, again, QuickBooks allows it to make it a lot easier for you to file taxes for your company, all right? And of course, with the flexibility of using TurboTax and as well as other professional accounting softwares out there that help you, produce your file your taxes. This is exactly what they are asking you for, is that if you potentially are going to use QuickBooks to file your taxes, then they're going to ask, obviously, private information. And what this tax ID number does is, as we gradually go into setting up everything else, you're going to have what's called a tax line or a line, which identifies something that belongs on the tax form. So again, it is not required for you to file your taxes, especially when you're using QuickBooks, because you have the option to do so. It just makes it more easier to file your taxes if you have everything set up in QuickBooks, because all you have to do is give your professional accountant the actual company file, and they'll just pull all the information for you. So in this case, I do have one. I believe it's 11, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 9 digits. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Yes, that should be it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So again, I'm coming up with a random tax ID number, of course, because this is a fake business. It doesn't really exist. All right. Other things that you need to have is you don't actually are not required to have a street address. You can have a P.O. box depending on what kind of business you are. But in this case, I do have a location. It's going to be 123 Main Street. And city is going to be Pleasanton, California. And I think it's 84121. And of course, it's in the US. Phone number. Okay. I think it was 510-555-1212. And of course, you're not required to have a fax, but if you do, you may do so. Email address. Okay. I think, is it Academy? So this is where I usually ask for, your input as well as help me fill out this form. But again, because you guys don't have the book, or you guys have the file, usually this is where I ask for help. Okay, so here's info at academyphoto.info. Okay.
At Academy, my info.
Okay. So.
My photo. Yeah.
Okay. So info at academyphoto.info. Okay. And the website here is going to be www.academyphoto.info. Okay. So, you should have a business email. Okay. So the next step is, now that I completed my form, I filled it out already. So now I'm going to go ahead and start setting up my actual file. So here, the first thing it's going to ask you is, well, what kind of industry do you belong to? So this is where you need to do your research. Well, depending on what kind of company you are, do you sell merchandise? Do you sell etc., etc.? Are you part of a manufacturing company? What kind of industry do you belong into, right? And I've listed a few of them. Remember, yesterday I talked about there's makeup, which is considered beauty, right? There's there's photography, cinematics, movies, and things like that. Those are considered art. Other things like music is going to be obviously music. So in this case, they tell me that my kind of business that I belong into, or industry, is going to be art, writing, and or photography. And that's what we are. We're a photo photography, professional photography kind of business. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. So here it's going to ask you a few more questions in regards to, so the first one is going to ask me, well, what kind of business am I? So this is where you also need to do your research. Most often, if you are beginning your company, you're most likely going to be a sole proprietor, or if you have another person in mind, then you'll most likely be a partnership. Okay. So here, I believe I am a S Corp. So I'm going to establish as S Corp, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. Okay, so now it's asking me to select the first month of your fiscal year. So again, this is what I was talking about, right? When do you begin actually executing your accounting cycle or your accounting periods, right? So in this case, you have the choice. You can, or when do you plan on filing your taxes? So most companies, okay, they go based on a fiscal year, okay? Because it just depends on when their busy seasons are and when their slow seasons are. But the best one to do, obviously, if you're, you know, don't want to have to think about having to file taxes in the middle of the year, the best way to do it is just to go ahead and do calendar year. At least it makes it simple and easy. You start on January 1st and you end on December 31st. So in this case, you are going to be entering the last day of your fiscal year to actually, sorry, this isn't the start date. This is just entering in your fiscal year. So in this case, I'm going to start my fiscal year on January, okay, because I'm going to do calendar year, okay? Okay. So the next thing that's going to ask you is to have an administrative password. Now, again, the most important thing about having an admin password is that if you potentially are entering in confidential information, you absolutely do not want free access to anything. And on top of that, QuickBooks will actually not allow you to go on with QuickBooks without a password. But for here, you know, of course, we're dealing with a bunch of information and we're, you know, having to sort our information out. They allow you to skip this initially, but the minute you close your company file and you open it up again, it's going to require you to set up a password immediately. They will not let you go on forth without setting up a password. So again, this is very, very important that you do, you know, do set a admin password for the reasons of protecting confidential information. But in this case, because I'm in the middle of my, you know, setting up my company file right now, I'm probably going to not remember it. So if you forget your password, you would have to contact Intuit to get your password set back up. So if you set your password now and you forget it, good luck. You may have to create another company file, or you just have to get it unlocked by Intuit. And that's the thing. If you bypass this and you start working on your company file, you know, starting adding your chart of accounts in, adding all that stuff, you can see that it's a lot of work and you locked it up. So one thing that I would recommend is while you're doing the easy step interview, go ahead and skip it. And then after you've completed your easy step interview, you can always set your password at any given time. Just remember though, the minute you close your company file and you try to attempt to open it back up, you are required to set a admin password that in order to start working on that file again. So in this case, again, because I'm setting up my company file, I don't have a paper or pen, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip it for now. Okay, so the next thing is to start actually creating your company file. So once I reach this place, it's going to ask me, I need to designate a location on where I'm going to place this file. So I go ahead and click next. So here it automatically pulls up my local C drive. Of course, if you are working on your own computer, you may have your own access to this. But if you are working on, you know, a company computer, you're probably not going to have access to any local drives, any local C drives. So what you're going to do is you're going to either place it on the desktop, or you're going to have to designate an actual folder for it. So in this case, I do have an actual folder for it. It's under QuickBooks Class, under Portable Files, under AM QuickBooks Class. So here again, because I titled my company file to be Academy Photography, here it is. It's popped up right here. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Now that I'm doing this, I get this little bar thing that is now it's actually creating my file. Okay, so right now my file is now becoming a working data file. And now I just have to wait for me to go ahead and move on to the next section. Okay, so now I successfully created my company file. So now the next section that you're going to do is going to be creating a generic chart of accounts and also setting up other things such as inventory and how do you want to have the rest of your QuickBooks set up. So this is going to be a series of questions and you just answer them, and as you answer them you're building your home page, you're building your company file. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click next. So the first question it asks here is, well, what do you sell? So they give you the 3 operating functions of a business, right? Are you a service only? Do you sell a product only, or do you do both? You sell and you sell a product and you also provide service. Now in this case, Academy Photography does both, right? Our service is doing the photo sessions, and the actual product we sell is picture frames that come along with the service, okay? Or it could be optional. So yes, we actually do provide both a service and we do sell a product. Next, so the next question is going to ask you, well, of course, if you're going to sell something, are you going to charge sales tax? This is by law that you must charge sales tax depending on what state you belong to. And I believe there's about maybe 5 or 6 states that do not actually charge sales tax. So make sure that you do your research on obviously what state you belong into. But we live in the state of Nevada, and yes, you are mandated to charge sales tax, okay? But there is a catch. For services or anything that's hospitality, you do not need to charge sales tax. There's no tax on actual service or kind of generated service, that kind of thing, okay? So, but because we sell products, yes, you do need to charge sales tax. So then the next question is, do you want to create estimates in QuickBooks? So again, what is this? Well, this is definitely for people who call in and ask for quotes. So typically, again, this is what it is. It's pretty much a projection, or it's an estimated amount of what could potentially be. And yes, you definitely want something for that, especially if you're working in service. All right. Obviously, your products are going to have a set price, but especially when you're doing service, you're probably going to get asked this many times. How much is your photo shoot per hour? How much do you have a bundle, etc., etc. So you definitely want to have estimates as part of it. Okay. Now the next part is going to be using statements in QuickBooks. And what this is, of course, you definitely want to select yes, because when you do statements, it's basically when you bill your clients or customers, right? Do you want to build statements for those clients? And of course, if you're going to keep track of them, it is a good, business practice to practice. If you have a good list of clientele, you want to make sure that you actually have statements. Yes. Okay. Now the next one is going to be using progress invoices. Okay. So what this is if you have a long project, right? What this allows you to do is it allows you to, break it up in sections and you're going to invoice them, or you're going to charge them based on the sections as you progress through the entire task. So if you they usually say that if you say that you do have estimates, then it is recommended that you do also have in progress invoicing. Okay, so again, it just depends on what your company is. For this example, I believe they do say yes for this one, even though it does highlight to you recommended no. But because we have estimates, it is going to be generally rule of thumb to also have progress invoicing. Okay. Then the next question asks about managing your bills that you owe. So of course, this is definitely something you definitely want to have. So of course, the whole purpose of QuickBooks is you're supposed to facilitate, managing your bills, managing the people that owe you money, and making sure that you get reminders to make sure you pay your bills on time. So of course, you definitely want to have the managing bills option. Okay. So the next one is going to be tracking inventory in QuickBooks. So again, we will talk about this in chapter 8 when we dive into inventory. But there are 2 different types of inventories that you want to keep record for. Now, of course, I'll talk into the different types of tracking inventory, but this one is just asking the general question, well, are you going to have inventory? If you say yes, well, obviously the question next is, how are you going to keep track of it? Or are you going to keep track of it? And in this case, definitely yes, because I definitely don't want to buy 100 picture frames and not keep track of who buys them and who doesn't buy them. Okay, so I definitely want to keep track of my inventory. Okay, and we'll talk about the differences between having an inventory part and a non-inventory part. Okay, and that's what this is asking you. But for this one, it's just a general basic question. Are you going to keep track of inventory? Yes. All right. Now, the next thing is going to be, are you going to keep track of time? Now, this is very important, especially if you're going to provide a service. Because a lot of oftentimes that when you do provide a service, it's usually based on an hourly rate, or it's usually the service is based on a, per minute, whatever the service that you provide, right? So it makes sense that yes, you should definitely keep track of time. But another thing too is that especially when you have employees, it is definitely recommended that you want to keep track of time. All right, so can be utilized as a double whammy where your employees can also keep track of their hours. So yes. And on top of that, we'll talk about this when we get into chapter 9, when we dive into billable time. And it's also good to also have maybe you have a project and you want to keep track of how many hours you invested into this project. And yes, that is exactly what this is. And you know what? Even if I don't ever use it, I can always, either use it or not. So it doesn't matter. So it's always good to have yes. Okay. Then the next thing it's going to ask you is, do you have employees? And of course, in the book, we will be talking about payroll. So that's payroll is going to be chapter 10 and chapter 11. So of course, we're going to have payroll. So of course, we're going to have employees. Now, here is a funny kind of scenario, I guess, or kind of thing to look at, because a 1099 worker is not going to be considered an employee, but it's definitely an option that you can select. So I'm going to go ahead and select that we have W-2 employees, and yes, we will have 1099 contractors. Okay, again, they're not considered your employee because you do not pay for any taxes in regards to them. All they're doing is they're just a mere expense. So you just pay them for their service and that's it. They're independent contractors, these 1099 workers. But for the sake of this little setup, go ahead and either validate that are you going to have potential 1099 workers or are you going to have your regular W-2 workers, okay, your common law or your statutory employees. And in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and select them all because I don't know. Maybe I will have it, maybe I won't. So I went ahead and select that. All right. And then the next question is now going to say using the accounts in QuickBooks. Okay, so this is where we're going to start building a generic chart of accounts. Okay, by using the industry that we belong to. So we selected that we belong to art, writing, and photography. So when we actually start building our chart of accounts, which is going to be the next part, I'm sorry. So now it says select the date that you want to start tracking your finances. So again, they give you the option to start the beginning of the fiscal year, which is usually the January 1st. But again, we learned that you never use the 1st, okay? Other things that says here is you want to use today's date. Never use today's date. Reason being is because, whatchamacallit, you're not going to get a true depiction or a true measurement of profitability or your balances are going to be overstated or understated. So usually the only option that you would actually technically do is the beginning of the fiscal year, just because that we are starting our company and our beginning of the fiscal year, we're starting our transactions in January regardless. So in this case, I am going to start on the beginning of the year. But again, if you are a brand new company, you don't need to use today's date, but you can also select the date that you want to actually start. And remember, the recommendation is the last day of the previous months. But in this case, I'm not going to start in November. I'm going to start in January. Make sure that you're aware of this, okay? And again, it is in your book on the start date. Okay, so now here's the step where we're talking about building your generic chart of accounts. So with this being said, here are a list of sample accounts that they just generate for you, okay? And this list, you can accept all of it or you don't. If you don't need all of it, then you're going to have to build your own chart of accounts, and that's going to be the next step. So because, like I said, I mentioned earlier, because we selected the industry of art, writing, and photography, now it's pulling up generic accounts that could potentially be part of your actual things that you'll use. But again, most companies, when you actually start your chart of accounts, if you're the accountant, you should have a basic, list of accounts that you'll potentially use. So the basic ones are obviously going to be, your checking account. Other things is your inventory. Well, what inventory items are you going to have? So in this case, they built this generic chart of accounts so then you don't have to do so much work. Okay? And when they build these pre-made accounts, you can remove, delete, and get rid of them. You don't necessarily have to have all of them. Now in this case, I'm gonna go ahead and select all of them. All right, you could do that with using the check mark on the left side, or you can not select them. It's up to you what you want to do. Again, I'll probably have studio location costs, not really. Do I have tools and craft supplies? Not really. Do I have an automobile expense? Yes, I will. Will I have advertising and those kind of things? Yes, I will. Will I have bank service charges? Yes, I will. So again, this is just so that you can have a generic chart of accounts, so you don't have to enter in everything that it's already they by you selecting it, it's going to build it into your chart of accounts for you. It's going to generate a pre-made, pre-existing generic chart of accounts for you. Now you can, deselect all of them so you don't have anything in your accounts and start from square one. But in this case, I've selected a few things, and if I don't need it, I can go ahead and go back and fix it. So in this case, that's how many accounts I am going to take with me. So then, now I reached the congratulations, and that means I am complete with setting up my company file. All right. And then you should get another window that pops up, and it's going to be saying, well, what should you do next? Should you start setting up your lists for your, people? So your list could be considered your customers, your vendors, your employees. Okay. Other things that you want to do is maybe you want to set up your inventory items, right? Maybe you want to set up your items, and we'll talk about what items are in chapter 7. But this one is asking you, well, do you want to set up your inventory? You want to set up your service? You want to set up some items? And then lastly is going to be setting up your bank account. General rule of thumb is when you start a business, you definitely want to set up your bank account. But remember about utilizing confidential information. So if you potentially do set up your bank account in here, it is very crucial that you try to keep this file as secured and locked away and only let certain people have access to this. Yes, because again, if they have access to your bank account, they can do almost anything to your company. So definitely that is one of the most confidential information you definitely do not want to release. But for the sake of this fictitious business, they say go ahead and set up your bank account. So I'm going to go ahead and set that one up first, okay? Reason being is because we will go over how to set up your customers, your vendors, and your employees throughout the chapter. And of course, I've talked about this earlier. We will set up your items in chapter 7, but if you're going into inventory parts, we will set that up in chapter 8. So these things will soon to come, okay? But let's go ahead and set up our bank account. So usually it's going to pop up this little window, and you're basically going to enter in, well, what's your account name? In this case, I don't remember what that account name or that account number was, but let's go ahead and take a look in our book. So we have just a regular checking account. Okay, so just checking. And my account number is looks like what I can't even read my own book. This is a terrible scan of the book, but it does that say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Yeah, it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, so perfect. So here we're typing in our checking account number. Obviously, checking account numbers are not 6 digits long. They're a lot longer than that, from what I know. But definitely, if you decide to, in fact, place in your actual bank account in here, just be aware of what you're doing, okay? Now it says opening balance. In this case, I want you to leave it 0. Reason being is because if you enter in an amount here, it will change a lot of things. It will change a lot of things that are in your QuickBooks, especially in your checking account. General rule of thumb is you want, and we'll talk about this when we start entering in our opening balances. I believe they recommend you to leave it blank, okay? Because the next step that we will do is actually comparing our trial balance, making sure that we have the proper bank statement, so we're able to enter in this information. Okay, so here I am setting up my checking account, and again, no balances, and I'm going to go ahead and click continue. All right, then it's going to ask you this little, it's going to offer you a few things. Do you want to have the bank, do you want to purchase your checks from them? So again, one thing too is QuickBooks, they offer you checkbooks, okay? So every check that we write here is actually through the Intuit program or the QuickBooks itself. But in this case, if you have your own business checkbook, all you have to do is just match the according check numbers. But again, they're trying to, maximize and facilitate a lot of things for you. So again, we talk about having to deal with employees. They do have a payroll process that helps it make it easier for you to calculate. But in this case, make sure you deny everything, because if you say yes, that's where they're going to start asking for your credit card and all that information. And so make sure that you click no thanks. And then continue. All right, so now that we've set up our whole entire thing, the next thing that we want to do is go ahead and start working. All right, so again, here is the beautiful home page, and of course you get your little spotlight notification on what's new in QuickBooks. We can ignore that. And so now here is our home page. So there are a couple things that you need to know, because the next chapter is going to be talking about customizing everything in QuickBooks. And by completing the easy step interview, so all the things that we said yes for and all the things that we said no for, this is how you're creating or customizing your actual homepage. Now, once you've created your company file, and let's say you change your mind on something, right? So the one thing that you have to know is once you complete the easy step interview, you can never go back to it. Okay? Once you complete your easy step interview, you can never go back to it. So you're thinking, whoa, so I have to have all these things readily available? No. You can always edit anything, all the questions that were asked in the easy step interview. You can make changes by simply going to the edit on the menu bar, and you're going to go to preferences. So everything that you answered the questions for is going to be in the list of this. No. So again, but because we set up as a company file, so for example, let's go to time and billing, right? Because the question was, are you going to keep track of time? So here you go. Are you going to keep track of time? Yes or no? So if you say no, then there you change the answer that you answered during the interview. All right, and we'll talk more about this when we go into chapter 7, which is customizing QuickBooks. So again, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. So now that you set up your company file, and after you've completed the easy step interview, okay, now the next thing is creating your chart of accounts. Now, before I move on to that section, which I think I'm going to call a break, I'm going to show you what it's like to do for the Express startup. So here, I'm going to go ahead and close my company file, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click close company. Okay, so now once I click close company, first thing that's going to pop up is going to be this little window here. And again, I'm going to create a new company. So for those who are experts in QuickBooks and you want to decide that you want to make the layout for yourself, go ahead and use the Express Startup. Now on this one, it's just straight start setup. Okay. Once I do that, now the first thing it's going to say is going to enter your email. In this one, I believe you can close this one. You don't need this. You don't need the admin password for this. So you can close this out. Okay, hold on. So you're going to click your start. Oh, I think at the bottom it says you can skip it. Okay, so enter your email address. Okay, so anything that you want to place in here, I believe you can skip this. You don't need to create an email just yet. You could skip this. I just have to maybe pull up higher. Yes, there you go. Skip. Okay, so now here you are at your window. So basic, same piece of information, but this time I'm going to go ahead and create another fictitious business, okay? So I'm going to say, well, my business, okay, is called Coffee Cafe. Okay? And my industry that I belong to, of course, is I am a restaurant. So I don't know if I type in restaurant. Yes, we have restaurant, cater, or bar. Yes, that's what we are. Okay. Business type. So again, I established myself as a sole proprietor. And then my business identification number. So again, this is your tax ID number. So in this case, I'm going to say it's 12, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I think that's 9 numbers. Yes. And then now it's going to ask you for your business address. So I'm going to go ahead and use the school address, 2625 South Rainbow Boulevard. And city is going to be Las Vegas, and it's going to be in the state of Nevada. N. Oh, down. That's right. NYNV. There you go. And zip code is, I don't remember. Is it 89146? I think so. Of course, we're in the U.S. and phone number. I'm going to go ahead and put the school's phone number, 853-7482. Okay. Of course, this is a fictitious business. I'm not going to submit this. But I'm going to go ahead and click Create Company File. And once I do that, that's exactly what it's doing. It is creating the file for me. And here I am. And guess what? It's going to be pretty much blank. Why? Because we have no settings for anything. We didn't have to enter in any information for completing this actual company file. So here it says, here you go, you're all set. What is the next thing that you want to do? And I'm going to go ahead and click Start Working. So once I do that, look at my home page. It has absolutely nothing in here. Why? Because I have to build my company from scratch now. And how I do that is, again, by utilizing the Edit Preference window and answering all the questions one at a time in your actual section here on the company file. So again, I can answer questions in regards to my checking account. I can do my general information, my financial charges. I can do my items, right? Items of inventory. Do I have inventory? That's the question here. Do you sell a product? Yes, inventory purchases are active, meaning I'm going to activate my inventory section. So everything that you have to do is you're going to have to manually build it yourself. Now, again, it may be a lot quicker and a lot easier if you already are experienced and you know exactly what you want. But again, if you are an experienced person, I think doing the detailed start is a lot easier because then that way you don't have to set up everything one at a time. You could just do it all in one go. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and click cancel. So that's what happens when you use the express start. You just type in the information for your company and boom, that's it. You have to build your company from square one. Okay? So that is how we create our company file in QuickBooks. All right? Any questions in regards to this? Anybody else has any questions?
I don't have any.
Okay. So for those who were in my accounting class, do you guys see why I had you guys fill out the business plan? It's so then you can bypass this easy step interview in a quick and easy flow. No need to stop and have to think about it. All right? So with that being said, right now it is 9:45 and it's actually 9:48. I'm going to call it at 9:50. So please be back no later than 10:10. I'll give you 20 minutes today.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.